Welcome to rePROs Fight Back, a podcast where we explore all things reproductive health, rights, and justice. I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and I'll be helping you stay informed around issues like birth control, abortion, sex education, and LGBTQ issues, and much, much more. Giving you the tools you need to take action and fight back. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of rePROs Fight Back, live from my closet. So, as everybody is currently trapped at home because of the pandemic, I am recording from my closet instead of the nice studio we have in our office. So, a couple things you may have to put up with. The sound quality might not be as good, but I'm doing my best. But you also may have to put up with my cats. So, I was trying to think of what the right solution would be to keep them from being in the background on things, but there wasn't going to be one. You know, I could try and lock them out of the room I'm in, but they would probably just sit outside the door and cry, and you would hear that. So hopefully they're not going to be too distracting or sit there and cry at me while I'm recording, but no promises. But, you know, that's where we're all at right now. I hope everybody's doing okay. I'm doing good. I am working from home, and luckily I am not going too stir crazy. I think I've mentioned this before, but I'm an only child, and I grew up in kind of a rural area, and I went to Catholic school in town. So I didn't know anybody that lived around me. So I spent a lot of my time by myself as a kid. So I am better mentally prepared for some of this than I think. And I'm also an introvert. So I think I'm really lucky in that this really isn't too bad for me. I'm, reading and, chatting with some friends online, but I haven't been going too stir crazy being trapped at home, which is nice. I hope everybody is doing well, though. I know a lot of people are really struggling right now for so many reasons, and just know that we're here for you. So, helping me get through all this, like I said, I've been reading, I've been watching, endless Netflix or Hulu or whatever. Right now I'm getting close to finishing up The Americans, which is exciting. So I'll have to figure out what's next. I don't really know what I'm going to move to next. So if anybody has any recommendations, always feel free to reach out. Same with books. If you have any good books I should be reading. But today's project, I think, is going to be... So I have been doing some bread baking, but as I'm sure a lot of people have seen, there's a shortage of yeast and flour quite often at stores right now. So that has made it a little more difficult because I didn't get a chance to stock up too much before. So I'm almost out of yeast, which is a bummer. But I am going to start making a sourdough starter. So it's something that when I talked about earlier with my new year, things I wanted to do in the new year was do some things that scared me. And for some reason, doing sourdough and sourdough starter was always really intimidating to me. So I'm trapped at home right now for who knows how long. I'm going to do it. Why not? So I will keep everybody updated. But I'm going to start the starter today, I think. But anyway, by the time you hear this, I will have started it for sure. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, I will be able to make some sourdough bread. I'm looking forward to that. So, yeah, I think with that, there's just a lot happening right now with just everything. But with states trying to take advantage of the pandemic by attacking access to abortion, by saying it's not an essential service and trying to close abortion clinics, which obviously abortion is an essential service. There's a time restriction on it. You need an abortion when you need an abortion. You can't put it off for months. So, this is really upsetting, and it looks like it's going to be going through the courts. And so I'm recording this the Thursday before this comes out. So it's April 2nd. So things may have changed between now and when you're listening to it, but it looks like it's going to have to go up to the Supreme Court to figure out if states can do that. So hopefully we'll have some good rulings, but it's a really scary time for so many people for so many reasons. But I'm really feeling bad for the people who are in states who are trying to access abortion care and who have had their clinics or their appointments canceled. So that's right now, as of recording, that's in Texas. Texas clinics had to cancel appointments. So just know that I'm really thinking about the people who are struggling right now and have the added burden of not being able to get the abortion they need. So we'll be talking about that a little bit today in my interview, but just wanted to put that up top. So what I am doing around that is I've also been doing some donating. So, there's lots of places where you can give your money right now to places that need help. So I have given to a number of things. So one of them was Crooked Media had a donation fund that they set up. So I think it was like crookedmedia.com/coronavirus. And you could then donate to them and they would divide your donation between a number of organizations. So I did that. I also made sure to donate to the National Network of Abortion Funds. I have a monthly donation that goes to some local abortion funds, but I figured right now the National Network could use the extra money to give to the funds who need it. So I did that as well yesterday. So, if you are able and can, I think abortion funds could really use your support right now for people who are struggling to access care. So with that, let's turn to today's interview. I am really excited. I have been looking forward to interviewing Calla Hales for a while. And I'm just really lucky that this worked out right now, that there is a lot of things that she has to talk about with clinic harassment and ongoing clinic harassment during the pandemic, even though the state, she's in North Carolina, has been on a stay-at-home order. And you still see people going to the clinic every day and protesting in defiance of that order. So I think it's going to be a really great and important conversation with Calla, talking about the ways that clinics are seeing harassment and have been seeing harassment. So we're going to talk about clinic harassment in general, but we're also going to talk about what she is seeing right now during the pandemic. So with that, I'll turn to my interview with Calla. Hi, Calla. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jenny.
I'm so excited to talk to you, but actually about kind of a terrible topic that you have to deal with way too much.
I deal with lots of terrible things, but I'm assuming you mean protesters.
Yes. So unfortunately, you still have some, but we'll get to that. But let's start with talking a little bit about clinic harassment that you see or that is common around abortion providers. Do you just maybe want to talk a little bit about that, and then we can talk about some of the different kinds?
Sure. So I am the executive director of a preferred women's health center. I operate 4 clinics in the southeast of the United States, 2 in North Carolina and 2 in Georgia. Specifically, when it comes to clinic harassment and protesters, our Charlotte location is very much a targeted place. Arguably, depending on how you define quote unquote the worst protesters, our Charlotte location is the most heavily protested clinic in the world. In terms of sheer volume, not necessarily behaviors, I can tell you that there are quite a few clinics that deal with incredibly brazen protesters that are in those situations. The numbers don't mean anything when you've got 10 guys who have no feelings for the law. Like I said, it's kind of arguable how you find what's the worst.
Right.
Our Charlotte location, especially for the past 5 years, has had a really increasing amount of protesters, and it just increases every year. Last year, we saw over 18,000 protesters.
That is a mind-boggling number.
It really is. It is one of those situations where you just kind of wonder, like, how did this happen and why is it allowed? And we never get to have real solid answers on that. And that's a very upsetting thing that a lot of providers have to face, is that we aren't always going to have people on our side to fight our battles when it comes to these things, especially when it comes to city government and policing, anything where lawyers can be involved, because the First Amendment is a very sticky subject. And especially when you're in the South, where religion is a very huge aspect of the culture, people do not want to infringe upon any First Amendment right involving religion, especially.
Right. And that has really turned into kind of a cudgel, as we've seen with like the birth control benefit and things like that, to say that their freedom of religion trumps your freedom to access healthcare.
Yeah, and it's something that we've continued to see over the years in culture, and just in varying places as well. Like you mentioned with the birth control mandates, with whether or not people should be forced, quote unquote, there to serve clients that have different lifestyle choices, whether it be sexuality, religion, or, I mean, it's some places cultural differences, the ability for small business owners to refuse service to them. And even going as far as situations like at clinics where you're having large scale protests that are being allowed to happen, that because of a religious aversion to abortion. But we all know in the back of our minds, if this was a Black Lives Matter rally, or in Charlotte's case specifically, I can actually cite like a Charlotte uprising incident, that this would never happen. Like, there is no even policing, there is no even support of free speech among citizens.
So that's one type of harassment that clinics see. I think one that we've been hearing more, and I think there was a big example recently of online harassment. Do you guys have a lot of online harassment? I'm sure you personally do, because you tweet pretty openly about the work you do.
On the business side for the clinic social media, we don't exactly receive large amounts of online harassment. A lot of the harassment we receive for the business is either in person or via mail. However, I personally, on my accounts, do have to deal with a lot of internet harassment. I choose to be more vocal about my work, especially in the past few years, because I found it to be really important, as a lot of people didn't know what the level of harassment at clinics was like. I was constantly being told that it was just little old women who wanted to give other people a choice. And it was this idea that, like, the protesters outside weren't forceful. They were just quietly standing there. And that was this blanket assumption that people had about protests at abortion clinics, when you and I know that that's radically untrue.
Yeah, that's definitely the image that people were painting around the Supreme Court case around buffer zones. It was just this little kindly lady just gently handing you literature to, steer your choices, not people sitting there yelling at you.
Yeah, and that image stuck with people, and it's definitely been a drive of mine now to make sure that people realize that that's not what's going on. So I have been very open, much to the dismay of my friends and family, about my job, and particularly on Twitter. And it definitely has resulted in quite a bit of online harassment. There have been a couple of incidents where something I would tweet would be taken, like in a thread, would be taken out of context.
Of course.
And it would be picked up by a politician. I had that happen last year about the Born Alive Survivors Bill Act that came up in North Carolina, and one of the Republican senators picked up one tweet from a Twitter thread about it, and made it seem like I wanted to kill babies up to 30 days old. And out of nowhere, I'm getting, death threats. I'm getting all of these crazy tweets and messages, and it gets picked up by Glenn Beck and the Blaze.
Oh, man.
just horrific. And you don't, and you like go back and you look at this tweet and you like, I still do this from time to time. I'll go back and I'll read this tweet and I'm just like, how did you get there? How did you make that leap? But, it's the internet's a very weird place. People are usually really emboldened to say things they'd never tell you in real life. And then, you have the flip side that I've been very lucky to have a lot of lasting connections, especially in the repro world, from folks on Twitter. And that's how we've connected. And that's actually been such a boon the past couple of years to be able to talk to people about how rough this can be.
Yeah, no, it was really great. It was nice that's how I have found out. I mean, you hear from a lot of different sources, but following your Twitter has really helped shed light on what you're facing every day at your clinic. Seeing the protestors that are there every day, or hearing about whatever the latest incident was. It's nice to keep it in the forefront of my mind. And I think that's important. And I think it's important our listeners hear what people at clinics are facing every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that even if it's just me tweeting and, the lots and lots of cursing and F-bombs and bad humor along the way. But if that's what it takes, I'm glad that I can help in some way.
Well, so I don't know if I ever told you, but my origin story actually goes back to I went to Catholic school, K through 8. And I had a friend in, I don't know, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. I don't remember when this happened. Asked me if I wanted to go with her and her family to go save babies in Madison. And saying, yeah, no, I mean, obviously, yeah, let's go save babies. And like going home and being like, Mom, can I go with so-and-so to go save babies? And Mom like sitting me down and being like, so let's have a conversation. And not telling me what to think, but kind of just doing the real basic, like, well, have you ever thought about this? Or what if this person is in this situation? And then being like, do you still want to go? And like totally changing my mind. So I trace my role in this field and the work I do back to a clinic protester.
That's actually like, it's super interesting because I feel like a lot of folks, especially who grew up in religious households or did religious schooling, have that type of moment. It's either make or break for them. My husband grew up in a very Catholic family and went to Catholic school all the way up until college. We have this discussion a lot about how much his life has changed since he, left Catholicism, but how he wouldn't have even spoken to me when he was growing up because I would have been the devil. And now he's married to me.
So my parents were never that way. So it was just not like part of my realm. Like it just wasn't part of my world. And I think like the school I went to was actually pretty good. Like we didn't go to like March for like it just wasn't part of our vocabulary. Like it just didn't happen. But it was just like this one specific family that was like really into it. And so it was her asking me to go. But like I don't remember ever hearing about it like in school per se. I mean, obviously when we did like sex ed, which was obviously abstinence only, but in like talking about it being wrong, but there was never a huge focus on it. And I don't know why.
I don't know either. I'm that makes me kind of hopeful to hope that not every person who's been to Catholic school has had this forced on them. That makes me feel a little bit better. I do know that the school he went to is particularly stringent about their anti-choice faith. Mm-hmm. So, and I do have quite a few friends here in the South that have grew up with the same mentalities. It's interesting to see that change over time, whether it be a specific instance like yours mm-hmm. or a radical paradigm shift like his. It's somewhat heartening to know that change can happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. So sorry, we've gotten totally off topic and talking about.
No, when I say I'm heartened by that, that does not mean I think that Flip Venom is going to wake up one morning and realize how much of a dick he is, but one can dream.
One can hope. Yeah. So, you mentioned that you get male harassment too.
Yes, I do get some male harassment. We get a lot more of it at the clinic than I do personally.
That's good. I mean, I'm glad. Like, it's always scary when they have your address, and use it.
Yeah, it hasn't been the best. Unfortunately, in North Carolina, your address, your home address is on your voter registration, and you can look it up online.
Ah, gotcha.
So it's very public. There are ways to find that, which is something that I've been reaching out to a lot of folks about. Of like, how can I get this off for like safety reasons? But it was also a couple years ago, back in 2015, I had a personal attack that ended up being a major part of my life, and also ended up being something that was talked about in a large publication. And around that time, all of my all of my private information got doxxed: my phone numbers, my email, my addresses, like all sorts of things. So it's been an ongoing struggle to like keep as much private stuff private as I can, I guess. Though I will say that the private mail coming home has really like dwindled over the past couple of years. It's really just going to the office now, which is nice.
That's nice.
As nice as it can be, I should say. A lot of the mail we get though is usually on the mass mailer side, like groups like And Then There Were None, and Abby Johnson, Cities for Life. I have a couple of like individual folks that like I recognize their handwriting at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And those individuals send me letters constantly. Things like that. But it's usually like the same shtick of, you don't have to work here anymore, abortionworker.com. And every time I hear that, I don't remember what website commercial that was. Is it like booking.com, booking.yeah, or something like that? It was like a commercial back a couple years ago about like hotels, and now it does not leave my mind. And every time I hear abortionworker.com yelled at me, that's the only thing I think of. But I get a fair amount of that. Every now and then we get some super off-color, creepy messages, but they haven't been too terrible over the past couple months at least. We did get copies of Unplanned. That was fun.
Oh, uh-huh.
I just want to let you know, if you're wondering what to do with unwanted copies of DVDs, they are great coasters. They're also really fun to drive over them because they crack. Just so satisfying. That is what we've done.
To do with the ones we got.
So that's definitely something we've done. And yeah, the mail, I find the mail less creepy than the online harassment, but I think that just also says something to me as a millennial. I'm just used to online harassment. Like, the online harassment is more prevalent to me, I guess.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So, mail, online, so protesters. What protesters? And I know you get a lot of them. You said you had 18,000 last year, which again, just blows my mind. At the one location.
Just the one location, yeah.
Wow.
It is, you know what? Protesters are a very odd part of this job that I never thought would be as big of a part of like work as when I started this job.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was going to be like the cops will help us out, the city will help us out kind of moment. Yeah, that has not been the case. It takes a lot of additional work on our end to make sure that we're keeping as much, like, I guess, protocols in place to really cut down on the impacts that protesters have in like our community and in our neighborhood. And it's really sad to know that it falls down to a clinic that is already pushed to its capacity to have to protect itself. So that's been a really eye-opening part of this job for me. We definitely have our usual suspects, like every clinic. You know, we have lots of folks from Cities for Life, and, you know, we do have a few more of the high-profile protesters at our clinic. People like Ante Popkovic and Flip Benham that are regulars at our Charlotte clinic. We also have the very dubious distinction of being the first clinic that Love Life started their program at. And it's also the largest program they have. Love Life started in Charlotte back in 2015, and each year it's just gotten bigger and more involved in the Charlotte community and also starting to reach out. They now have presences in Greensboro and Raleigh, North Carolina, and they recently started a chapter in the past couple months in New York City, which astounds me, but to each their own, I suppose. The Charlotte location in particular, we've had some really difficult times trying to sort out how to coexist with protesters, particularly Love Life. Their setup is this program called 40 Weeks of Life. So for 40 weeks,
God, that's like
every
the whole
Saturday,
year.
Almost the whole year. For 40 weeks, they have large demonstrations on Saturdays, which is, for most clinics, the busiest day we have. And these demonstrations for us regularly average around 300. And they desperately and definitely interfere with what we're doing. There's amplified sound. In some cases, they get parade permits and the city lets them shut down part of the street. We see cars being waved in and traffic being impeded by people walking in the streets. It's definitely a huge nuisance, not just for us, but our entire neighborhood and business park.
Oh, yeah.
In a more kind of insidious way, the past 2 years, we've really been focusing on amplified sound because the amplified sound on Latrobe is outrageous. You can hear straight through the walls. There are days where I have to wear earplugs inside of my office because I can't hear anything but them. And we went to the city and tried to have a noise ordinance passed to have a little bit of like a sound-free buffer. I hate to use the word buffer zone because that means has already raises so many alarms for folks, but a noise-free area around the clinic, these quiet zones, which are pretty standard in a lot of neighborhoods across the country, really, depending on what the neighborhood is, whether it be a medical necessity, whether it be close to a hospital, things like that come into play. So, you know, this was all based off of things that were already existing. However, when the ordinance got passed, it was for 150 feet. There could, around a clinic or a healthcare zone, a school or a place of worship, you could not have a permit for amplified sound. Well, Love Life took ownership of a property that was next door to our administrative building, which puts it just over 150 feet away from the clinic. And because they have the property, they have the ability to bypass public ordinances and can use private property ordinances for amplified sound, which is a higher volume. So it was ultimately worthless for us as a clinic. It has been helpful at other clinics in the city, but for us, it's been pretty worthless. We still have amplified sound every day. It's actually set up right in front of my office. So my office in particular is incredibly loud. And it doesn't really stop. And that type of choice made on the behalf of the protesters is very clearly a deliberate choice to continue to interfere and harass people. You hear protesters say all the time that they're there to give other options and educate people on other choices they may have. And then you run into situations like this where it's very intentional what they're doing. And it has nothing to do with education, but everything to do with harassment. You have clinics like our own. We had one of these issues a couple of years ago where protesters are coming with their own Wi-Fi nodes and labeling their Wi-Fi something like abortion clinic or preferred clinic, whatever. And, you sign in and this pop-up comes up that looks like a health clinic's website, but really it's an anti-site saying,
oh man, I don't know if I've heard of that.
Yeah, we had one of these a couple of years ago, and it still happens every now and then. But yeah, the websites, these, I guess, like a portal to Wi-Fi. When you sign into public Wi-Fi, you have to go through the front page. It's one of those, and it's like it says information on abortion, and you open it, and it's that one of those really graphic and grotesque like cartoons of what protesters think abortion is. And, they're like pushing, like airdropping this and Bluetooth downloading this on people's phones in the waiting room. There's nothing counseling or educational about that. That is purely harassment, and it's purely intent to deceive. And that's something that has constantly stuck with me, is that I am constantly amazed by the lengths protesters will go to deceive, shame, and harass patients.
I know one other area that a lot of clinics were seeing a rise in was vandalism. Have you been dealing with that as well?
We definitely have had incidents of that over the past couple of years. We've had a window get knocked out. We've definitely had messages chalked on our sidewalks and in our driveway. Folks have this very weird and creepy habit of pinning little, I guess, like little ceramic baby feet.
Oh.
It's very weird, but ceramic baby feet to our fence. Like we have a trellis fence in front of our clinic with privacy bushes. And like, I guess they decided to pin them to the trellises. It is so bizarre, but I like to go through. I have to pick those up once a week. It's interesting. We have not had the type of vandalism some other clinics have had. And I think most of that has to do with the fact that we're in a pretty busy business park.
Oh, okay.
So that's been kind of helpful. But yes, we still get our fair share of weird incidents.
Yeah. So, you kind of touched on this with talking about the Born Alive bill that was in North Carolina. There's just been this real escalation in rhetoric and really inflaming on the anti-choice side. And I feel like, have you been seeing then a commensurate reaction among the amount of harassment you're seeing?
I would say yes. With everything going on right now, with all of the laws these executive orders being passed, and over the past couple of years with different laws coming through and lawsuits in general, I would say that protesters in particular are feeling pretty emboldened. They feel like this administration's on their side and supports them, and that if you're against them, that you're just wrong and the government will have their back. Unfortunately, they're not exactly wrong.
Right.
This administration does not have our back and is not protecting anyone, whether it be providers of abortion care or those seeking abortion care. But particularly right now with coronavirus and the pandemic going on and all of these stay-at-home orders, we are seeing this very real and honestly scary switch from protesters trying to toe that line of what is legal and what is not, to just blatantly doing what they want because of First Amendment rights, because executive orders aren't being enforced right now in a lot of places. We've seen two arrests of Love Life leaders in Greensboro recently. But what's really ironic to me is those leaders were actually in Charlotte that morning on Saturday, where they actually started in Charlotte, weren't getting the attention they wanted, went to Greensboro and got arrested.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to make clear that you are still seeing protesters every day.
Every day we are still seeing protesters. Granted, because I've had some people tell me, like, well, this is a smaller number than you're used to. And, that's not necessarily wrong. The past couple weekends, we went from, before all of this happened, having 300 a weekend to seeing the first weekend of recommendations of people less than 50 and stay at home. At this point, it was recommendations. We saw 151. Then on the next weekend, which was the 21st, I think we saw 96. And then this past weekend, we saw 45. So as the numbers of gatherings that the state or your local government's allowing get smaller, the protest groups are still getting smaller, but they're still radically over that limit.
Right.
We're still seeing large groups showing up on weekdays. Arguably, we're seeing bigger groups on weekdays than we're used to. I'm honestly used to seeing anywhere between 5 and 15. We average honestly around 9 or 10 on a weekday. And we're averaging closer to 15 now. And we have some days where we've got 25 or so spread out along two driveways. It's definitely more on weekdays than we've ever been used to before.
Yeah, you would have hoped that they would follow the common sense guidelines and stay home. But I think that it just kind of feeds into the next thing, is they're treating their protest as essential while arguing and trying to get states to argue that abortion itself is not essential and trying to force clinics to close. Do you want to talk about that and why that's so problematic?
Absolutely. There is this ongoing conversation that between anti-choice folks and I would say the general public, because I'm not seeing a lot of pushback from even folks that would label themselves advocates or activists for abortion. But I'm still seeing the general support of this for abortion being essential across the board. But anti-choice folks in general are really loudly asking Republican lawmakers to declare abortion non-essential. And a lot of states we're already seeing this issue happen. We're seeing Republican legislatures using a pandemic as a way to curb abortion care and straight out, in some cases, just outlaw it, which is honestly grotesque and a human rights violation. Admittedly, the entire handling of this pandemic is a human rights violation, but it's another just another level added.
I mean, I'm just thinking of all of the people who have lost jobs, and the right choice for them may not be to have a kid right now, and then to be forced and be unable to go and access the care you want is just horrifying to me.
Absolutely.
Abortion
care. Yeah, abortion care is absolutely essential. It is a time-sensitive healthcare that the longer a person is forced to wait, the more obstacles they are going to have to face, whether it be trap laws, distance, economics, personal issues with family. I mean, the list goes on about the longer people have to wait, how much more they have to go through to get care. And to be quite blunt, we don't know when this is going to end.
Right.
We don't know when COVID-19 is going to magically decide that it's going to go on the downturn, because none of us know how to handle this. And our government is clearly not handling it all. So this is something that's going to probably last for months. If a person was seeking abortion care today, that was, I don't know, 12 weeks, but still had to wait months to receive care, chances are they would not be able to receive care at all. And then you force a pregnancy on someone who, A, didn't want it, B, probably had their own reasons for not wanting to carry this term, whether it be safety or economic or honestly just any
Whatever
variety of
the reason.
reasons.
Yeah.
And whatever their reason is, that's their choice and it's valid. But it's been taken from them. And I think, honestly, what's going to end up happening is this pandemic is going to be the first of several massive healthcare issues and cultural issues that we see over the next few years. This is not something that when this pandemic ends, that's the end, this is all taken care of. This is going to have lasting repercussions for years, if not decades. And one of the major things we're going to see is, an influx of unwanted births. We're going to see a lot of strain on economic systems. I can tell you that a lot of folks have already mentioned how bad the uptick of partner violence and intimate domestic violence is. Just that uptick is happening because people are being forced to stay in quarantine and close quarters with abusers, which is
an
another
already
way.
Stressful situation. It becomes even more
once pregnancy comes into play. So this is not going to go away. And it's really horrifying to me that abortion is something that several patients use as to prevent their life from being ruined. Abortion literally saves people's lives. And governments are trying to take that option away. There's nothing healthy about that. There's nothing quote unquote pro-life about that. And that's incredibly upsetting.
So, with all of that, what can listeners do? What actions can listeners take to help with harassment or anything right now?
So, I would say I always have the same few recommendations for folks who want to help. And I'm a broken record. I'm sorry. If people are financially able, which I know is very hard and right now, especially, if they're financially able, I always recommend donating to abortion funds because abortion funds directly impact patient care and make sure that patients are getting the care they need with or without protestors. They don't even encounter this. I also want to go ahead and plug a couple of other groups like the National Abortion Federation and Abortion AF, because they do support clinics on the ground with practical needs as well, whether it be security, whether it be trying to get a hold of much needed materials right now in a pandemic, or in some cases, just to support staff and make sure that we're not going over the edge personally. Their support is very much needed. If, financially that's not feasible right now, honestly, talking to your legislators and just having that conversation with people in general about clinic violence and harassment and your feelings on it and how that's impacting communities, just even having that conversation is helpful because, like I said, a lot of folks don't know what's actually happening on this level. So even furthering that education is one of the best things we can do. And, I kind of mentioned it, but really talking to your legislators and supporting any of the moves they make to ensure abortion access and cut back on clinic violence, supporting that is really crucial. And, that's a great way to show support.
Great. So I decided that in these dark times, maybe to throw in one more really important question. What are you doing right now that is bringing you joy?
What am I doing right now that is bringing me joy?
Or just keeping you sane? What is getting you through everything right now?
So I am throughout this entire program or an entire pandemic, I should say. Yeah, I have to re-say that sentence. Throughout this entire pandemic and on top of all of these ongoing issues right now, I'm actually pregnant. So what's been really a good like escape for me has been doing just kind of nursery planning and stress shopping onesies.
That's
But
fun.
yeah, but one of the really big things that I've really focused on is building a library for her.
Yes.
So like going through all the recommendations for books for kids, and yeah, we're that's really been my escape the past couple of days, and it's been really good.
Yes, that's a good one. I like that, especially building a library because I'm a great big book nerd. So,
Oh, absolutely. I'm a huge book nerd, and like my cats are named after book characters, and that was one
yes.
thing that my husband was like, "You cannot name our daughter after a Harry Potter character," and I was like, "Oh, just you wait."
Surprise.
Surprise! I'm gonna spring it on him like after delivery. I'm just gonna be like, "Oh, by the way."
By the way, after all of this is the only thing I want right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna pull that guilt card really hard.
All right. Well, Calla, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Absolutely, and thanks so much, and thanks for sticking with it, even with the technical difficulties.
Okay, everybody, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Just know that we will be thinking about you during these trying times. I hope everybody is staying safe and doing what they can to flatten the curve and staying home when they are able to, if they're able to, and making sure to tip people extra who are in service and delivery, who are bringing you things if you are able. And yeah, if you can donate to your local abortion fund or food bank or whatever, they're all really hurting right now and could use your support. So with that, just know that I will be back in 2 weeks and hope that everybody stays healthy, and we will see you soon. Thanks for listening. Bye. For more information, including show notes from this episode and previous episodes, please visit us at our website at reprosfightback.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at reprosfightback and on Instagram at reprosfb. If you like our show, please help others find it by sharing it with your friends, and please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.